We set up this Gurukulam called Dharma Gurukulam about 2.5 years back, where we balance Bharatiya traditional knowledge in sciences and also we balance it with modern sciences. Everything was written as poetry in the Indian tradition.
Maths was written as poetry. Is that what you're saying?
All of sciences, math, formulae, questions, answers, everything were written.
That's because it is easy to remember?
It's an oral tradition. It says that Athulya Karnabhi Hatirdhi Bhakta Phalam Sphutam Tulya Chaturbhuje Cha Samashrutau Tulya Chaturbhuje Cha Tatha Yate Tad Bhujakoti Ghataha. They say, can't we indulge our current children with some among these pedagogical techniques? Let's say 11 multiplication is one of the easiest tables. Right. 3 11s are 33, we know this all well. Right. How about 32 into 11? We've got 3, we've got 2. In between add 3 plus 2, which will be 5.
Okay.
Answer is 352.
Oh.
Now 24 into 11 would be 2, 4, and in between
2 plus 4, 6.
264. Which child needs a pen paper to start doing this?
Whoa, just this.
You can do this and you can start doing this for square roots, cube roots, and they used to build mastery in children through various techniques rigorously. This is math. Where do you think the moon is rising? Can you close your eyes and tell me where the directions are? Where does the sun rise and set?
East and sets in the west.
But then where does the moon rise and set? We believe and we want to create a pathway and catalyze the pathway towards a Gurukula model of education becoming a global solution for various educational woes.
Namaste all. We have with us Gurupriya Chaitanya ji. He's a PhD scholar from IIT. He's also a Pradhan Acharya at Dharma Gurukulam. So let us find out from him if there has to be a change in education system that we are right now, and do we have to bring in changes to the way that we teach, or what was the way that kids were taught before, and why there was a shift. Definitely we know about the innovations, but then let's find out from him if we have to shift back. And he was also a software engineer, so he has seen both the worlds. So let us talk to him about this. Ji, namaste, welcome to the show.
Very happy to be on with Samvada here.
Very happy to host you. I mean, you're a scholar and then you have given us time, right? So, and you have quit the corporate world and then you have taken up, teaching at Gurukulam, which is very unusual. I mean, I've seen people, quit, corporate and they start their own businesses and all that. But then it's a different journey that you have chosen. What inspired you to, get into teaching in Gurukula? Teaching in college is different. That's more of a commercial aspect. But then teaching in Gurukula, what inspired you?
This is sort of a very classical answer. A teacher inspires a teacher. Long back in 2005, when I was an undergrad student of computer science, I entered a course on operating systems and I found my teacher sitting on Padmasana.
Okay.
I was not sure if I entered the right classroom, but thankfully I met the right person. And my journey started with Shriman Adi ji and his wife Matarshi Smriti ji, who are the founders of Anadi Foundation and Dharma Gurukulam. Okay. I've been phenomenally inspired by them. I was earlier a software engineer. I used to run my own software firm as well at some point in time. But the last decade or so, it's been an extensive investment into understanding how the Gurukulas function, how and if Bharat was the Vishwa Guru, what could have been the causes for it, or what could have been causative factors that could have led to such a title. And that's been the pathway towards rediscovering the concept called Gurukula, which is largely a black box still for everybody.
Right.
Even now, if I ask somebody to visualize a Gurukula, they're gonna absolutely think about a
banyan tree and
a long bearded person, right, with 6 or 7 children sitting around them, a few handful of them, and all. And when I ask people what do they learn there, everybody's baffled about this question. Everybody thinks they have been chanting
mantras,
which they have been doing, no doubt about it.
Right.
But what would their rigorous schedule be like? What would they do from the morning to evening? What do you think could be happening?
Well, I studied in a school, so I don't know. I mean, we want to hear it from you.
I too studied at a school and then I went all the way to IITs, but I was very curious about this question. That's why when we look at some serious research from the East Indian British archives, Dharampal and others point to humongous number of Gurukulams accessible across various communities, teaching a plethora of skills, allowing for a period of stay from 7 to 14 years with various offerings to give to children. Of course, if they were chanting from morning to evening, they are going to be thoroughly bored. And people also tell me in Gurukula, children observe the nature. They do. They live with the nature. They learn life skills. Of course, they do. But all of Bharat's brief economic history captured by the Angus Madison study, commissioned by the OECD countries, we see that the GDP of India has contributed to world's GDP to the proportion of at least 1/4 for about 17 centuries. From the 0th to 17th century, Angus Madison had found that India's contribution was 1/4 of the world's economy. And then, of course, innovations and a series of drain of economic wealth. But that begets the question, what should have driven this economy?
Right.
People might tell agriculture. Of course, the Silk Route definitely tells us that. The spices route that do tell this. But when we look at the jewelry, when we look at so many technologies, look at weaving technologies, water harvesting technologies, casting statues, iron and steel industry, we see a sort of a world leadership in many of these technologies. And the fundamental sciences such as mathematical sciences, astronomical sciences, spiritual sciences, chemical engineering, name it, medicinal sciences, we have been at the fore of the world, and that's why we deserve the title of Bharat as the Vishwaguru.
Right.
And it should have been the Gurukulam that should have driven, as any logical inference would lead to. Education should have been prevalent and accessible to all. If not, we would have had a civil war. If the kind of oppression-based understanding about earlier education was always remaining to be true. Everybody should have had great access to knowledge and technology. It's very evident from some among our ancient texts. Sadly, they largely remain unknown, for we are cut off from our own source text. Otherwise, what did Aryabhata do? What did he teach? What were these content like? How did they learn math? And all these were largely a black box. And that's why a last decade or so, investing very seriously in this research, thanks to the Cell for Indian Sciences and Technology in Sanskrit at IIT Bombay. I've had this opportunity, my gurus guided me there, and the great acharyas and professors there. Under their enablement, it's been a serious study of looking at some among these source texts. What is very relevant even now in pedagogy, what's relevant even now in computational thinking, is something that we are very seriously looking into. And we set up this Gurukulam called Dharma Gurukulam about 2.5 years back, where we balance Bharatiya traditional knowledge in sciences. And also we balance it with modern sciences. Our children have gone on to get IIT admits and so on. And we create a very holistic environment for them, for all their panchakoshas to develop. They wake up early in the morning, they can take care of cows, they can take care of themselves, but they are also very adept in math, calculus, very adept in Sanskrit, ancient literature, itihasas, Puranas and so on.
But we have been told doing all this is regressive. What do you have to say?
There are various neurocognitive benefits to it. I think that, for example, James Hartzell is from the University of Trento, Italy. He once started learning Sanskrit and he had this profound change in him. And he started doing Kantapata. And when he started attending meetings, he could exactly quote people instead of paraphrasing them. And he thought that he, being a neuroscientist, he knew that largely other variables were the same except for his foray into Sanskritam. So he thought that he will design a study based on a pre-existing study called the Mozart effect, where music's influence on the neurocognitive abilities of a person, especially Mozart's compositions, were studied. Modeling a neurocognitive study just based on that, it's a very well published article in the Scientific American. It's called the Sanskrit effect. I urge all listeners to definitely take a look at it.
Sure.
And it says that the hippocampus regions of somebody who regularly chants and regularly studies Sanskrit shlokas, the phenomenal benefits, in terms of both grey matter regeneration, a thicker cortex region, and a highly balanced hippocampus region. Hippocampus is responsible for both short-term and long-term memory. So this is quite phenomenal. And so there are a lot of persistent benefits. People might think it's regressive. Number two, we are sitting on a treasure trove of pedagogies.
Okay.
Let's take the word Samvada. We should have had Samvada in math as well. They should have been hypotheses. They should have looked at proofs. They should have looked at rigorous proofs. If not, how can this construction happen? How can things happen in engineering? There is a significant pedagogy, if I may, I'll show you some among our books. I'll draw your attention to how, proofs were given.
Okay.
We talking about Samvada. All of us do know, this is slightly turning into a math.
Okay.
topic. Bear with me, but you're going to love this.
Okay.
Now, this is a shloka from Bhaskaracharya's Leelavati. Bhaskaracharya was born in 1114 CE in a place which is now mapped to modern day Chalisgaon in Maharashtra. Everything was written as poetry in the Indian tradition.
Max was written as poetry. Is that what you're saying?
All of sciences, math, formulae, questions, answers, everything were written.
That's because it is easy to remember?
It's an oral tradition.
Okay.
And you commit to memory not by listening to prose. Right? I mean, even now we remember the Baba Black Sheep songs.
Right.
The wheels on the bus goes round and round even now. And the London Bridge is still falling down. So when we listen to songs, when we learn them as chants, they stay with us for a very long time.
True.
And in fact, they stay with us for a lifetime. And in that, when we look at Western meters, there are only 8 Latin meters based on which whereas in Sanskritam, the entire Chanda Shastra written by Pingalacharya in 300 BCE, not 3000, I'm sorry, 300 BCE, has a phenomenal science behind it. Let me give you an example. There is a chant called Subramanya Bhujangam.
Okay.
Now, whatever the idea that the poet wants to convey, he has to convey in this meter. And it has a code to it. It's a 12-syllable meter. A typical 12-syllable meter is made of short and long syllables. A is a short syllable, A is a long syllable.
Yeah.
And a combination of this, it's a binary computation.
Okay.
So 2 power 12 possibilities are there. It's like a 12-bit storage area in computer science. Okay. And so now 2 power 12 possibilities are there. One such possibility is called a Bhujanga Prayada. Okay. It goes like this. Sada bala rupa pi vighna drihantri mahadanti vaktrapi panchasya manya. It goes like this. Sa is a short syllable. Da is a long syllable. Ba is a long syllable. La is a short syllable. So it goes short, long, long, short, long, long, short, long, long, short, long, long. That's 12 syllables. And it mimics the motion of things that crawlers. Bhujanga means snakes or crawlers.
Okay.
How do worms, a snake moves very fast, you can't observe it, but when you look at the worm, it shrinks its body completely, expands.
And then expands, yes.
So there's a short syllable, long, long. Okay. The entire meter is called Bhujanga Prayata. Now, whatever the composer wants to compose, he has picked this meter, so whatever idea he wants to say, he must say it in this meter. Now, this we know works well for philosophy, for religion and so on. But will it work well for math? So they composed everything in mathematics, every formula, every proof, every demonstration as a poem in a particular chandas.
How do you say 2 plus 2?
So 2 plus 2 is not what they taught in poetry, in fact. But they taught rigorous proofs and principles through poetry. So poetry are like sutras that you can always remember. And there were other prose content called the commentaries. The commentaries would have various elaborations based on them and tell you steps of what you must do. Let me indulge you in a formula, for example, that's given as a song.
Okay.
A song goes like this in the Upajati meter. Atulya karna bhi hatirdvi bhakta. Atulya karna bhi hatihi dvi bhakta. So if I go into the details of it, it's quite rigorous. But I'll save the time and I'll tell you that they are talking about Atulya Karna, a Chaturbhuja, a 4-sided figure with unequal diagonals.
Okay.
A 4 equally sided figure with unequal diagonals, what could it be? Today the name for it is rhombus. Oh. But the rhombus doesn't tell you anything about the properties of rhombus. So now they're going to tell you the formula for the area of a rhombus. And it goes like this. It says that Atulya Karna bhi hatirdvi bhakta phalam sputam tulya chaturbhuje cha samashritau tulya chaturbhuje cha tathayate tad bhujakoti ghataha. They say. Now what are they talking about? They're talking about a rhombus and they're saying that the area of a rhombus is its product of its unequal diagonals, though it's a 4 equally sided figure. And then the proof for it would be to splice it into finer triangles and tell you that it is in fact the area of it. Similarly, if I look at the proof for the area of a triangle, they have given it in a beautiful verse. Lambagunam bhumyardham spashtam tribhuje phalam bhavati. So there is a triangle, you cut it at its half height, then cut this portion, it will fit here, cut the other portion, it will fit here. Now it forms a new rectangle whose dimensions are b into h by 2. Which child won't remember this?
True.
If we teach geometric demonstrations to most things, and all of a plus b the whole square and all this that the children have to tediously learn in the school,
By heart, in fact.
they have to by heart. They are all taught through beautiful upapattis. These are called upapattis, a form of particular samvada within math that tells you a delineation of how a result is arrived at and how, if there are any fallacies in it and if there are not any fallacies. These are called upapattis. So a square, when I split it like this, I'll find component areas. The bigger square is a plus b. Let's say this was a 7 centimeter square, I can split it as 5 plus 2 and I can create these bounding areas. There will be a 5 square here and a 2 square. Okay. There will be 5 into 2 here and a 5 into 2 here, 2 such rectangles. Oh. So this gives me the a plus b the whole squares expression. Now if I have to infinitely keep splitting, I can arrive at all the identities. You will see that this is a square and I have 2ab and 2ac. I have b square, 2bc, c square. Now if I give you what about a plus b plus c plus d, you would be able to arrive at it yourself. Right. But where is this applied? You apply it in quickly finding squares. So if I have to find 71 square, for instance, 7 square is 49, 1 square is 1. So I put a 0, 1, 4, 9, 0, 1. And in between them sandwich 2 times 7 into 1, which is 14. So if I sandwich that, I get the answer as 5041. It's an instant to calculate square.
Oh, okay.
So these kinds of techniques were taught to children. If I'll have to indulge you on a 11 multiplication table, one last example for math before I move on.
Sure.
So let's say 32 into 11. How would the oral tradition would have helped children learn without a notebook, pen? They had to make them really self-reliant in calculations, in remembering proofs, in remembering theorems. So all you had to do was bring yourself to the classroom.
Right.
Be there with a teacher.
Right.
And all you had to carry was this to the class. Isn't that liberating? Can't we indulge our current children with some among these pedagogical techniques? Let's say 11 multiplication is one of the easiest tables. Right. 3 11s are 33. We know this all well. Right. How about 32 into 11? We've got 3, we've got 2. In between add 3 plus 2, which will be 5. Okay. Answer is 352.
Oh.
Now 24 into 11 would be 2, 4. And in between?
2 plus 4, 6.
264. Which child needs a pen paper to start doing this?
Whoa, just
You can do this and you can start doing this for square roots, cube roots, and they used to build mastery in children through various techniques rigorously. This is math.
So this is Vedic math, is it?
So Vedic maths in fact is a title of a book published only in 1965 by the Shankaracharya of Puri. Okay. Bharati Krishna Tirthaji. That's how the term called Vedic maths became very famous.
Right.
But these are sutras from Swamiji. This particular technique he teaches in this Vedic maths. But maths has been existing since the Vedic times in itself.
Okay.
By building the 3 Treta Agnis, they started the quest for converting the area of a circle into a square. That led to our earliest quest for pi. And it led to later other geometric shapes led to the quest for root 2. We knew that was a number for which you can't really create a fraction of the form p by q. Today in modern math it's called irrational numbers. Yeah. It's because Hipparchus found it and people first deemed him irrational for having thought about this number. It's a fact. Yeah. And we have a very strong Eurocentric bias when it comes to science. Right. Now we are talking about a tradition where people think Aryabhatta invented the zero. He didn't. Okay. From the Vedic times, 0 and the entire decimal number system had been there. Right. Aryabhatta is in fact an expert in trigonometry. He has given the differential form in its discrete form for the inverse function of sine. He has given the sine table. We are talking about a genius here. However, we do not know our own scientific heritage in this process. That's a very truth of the reality. Yeah. So this is pretty sad. So awakening Indians, number 1, to understand our scientific heritage. Number 2, draw from these pedagogical techniques because they are relevant even now. You can rid away the phobia towards math. Right. Talk about sciences, talk about Ayurveda. Ayurveda is very relevant to introduce in the school age. Now students of biology can't tell you 10 species of plants and what they do, what their form is. An Ayurveda student will absolutely be able to do a guna karma vibhaga of a particular plant. Right. How do you create herbs? Children in our Gurukula produce their own snana powder, they produce their own danta powder, and they produce it in a beautiful Ayurvedic way where there are multiple experiments that they conduct. They find which is the ratio that works well for their teeth. They arrive at it themselves.
Okay, they have a different tooth powder for different teeth?
Yeah.
Is that what,
Yeah, that's how they arrive at it. They have a good time experimenting many of these facets.
Very nice.
Similarly, in yoga, there is a lot of research. My guru, Adiji, founder of Anadi Foundation, is also an adjunct professor of practice at IIT Delhi.
Okay.
There, he also guides PhD scholars in a yoga lab that works in the intersection of yoga and machine learning for understanding mental health.
Right.
So there are a lot of possibilities like this in the intersection of ancient Indian sciences and modern sciences.
Right.
All this is very fascinating for children to learn, and we are doing a huge disservice to children
By not letting them take this. So now that these are not in the curriculum, these are not in school, how can kids or parents motivate the children or get them to read this?
So that's why we came with this volume of 10 books that allows children in a very systematic way to know Bharatiya Ganita as well as integrated Indian sciences.
So there is science and maths both together?
Science and math. There are 3 volumes on science, 3 volumes on math. And then there is a deep dive on astronomy, yoga and Ayurveda for advanced children.
Right. So when you say advanced, can't a beginner start with this?
They will have to finish the other levels to go into this. For example, working with degrees and all that is required for Ayurveda, for astronomy.
Right.
So when we look at right now you can close your eyes and tell where the moon is.
Oh.
Where do you think the moon is rising? Can you close your eyes and tell me where the directions are? Astronomy, essential pedagogy from Indian astronomy is highly empowering. Even today, astronomy is, in education, we don't have astronomy. I'll give you an evidence for this.
Right.
Where does the sun rise and set?
East and sets in the west.
We won't debate that for now. Let's call it east and west for the time being, which isn't true, but it doesn't rise exactly in east. There's Uttarayana and Dakshina. We'll come to that in a moment. But then where does the moon rise and set?
We don't know.
There is a sunrise coffee, then there is no moonrise coffee. Have we heard of moonrise? Is the moon rising? How about the stars? Do the stars rise and set?
No, now that the earth is rotating, I don't know. I don't know what to answer.
So this, everybody knows that actually the sun isn't rising and setting, but we are spinning. Okay. But it extends to the moon if I am sitting on a spinning chair. Right. And if I am seeing myself spinning. Everything in my vision will go from left to right.
Correct.
This is what Aryabhatta said in his Aryabhatiya. What did he say? He said, Anuloma gatir naustaha pashyat yachalam vilomagam yadvat achalani bhani tadvat samapashchimagani lankayam. Only in Lanka this will happen, he's saying, not Sri Lanka. Lanka is a point and the intersection of the equator and the meridian line. Prime meridian back then, we calculated it as passing through Mahakaleshwar temple in Ujjain. Oh. So our prime meridian used to go through Ujjain, and Lanka is this point where the prime meridian and the equator meet. Okay. There he says if there was an observer there sitting on a boat and traveling on a river, what would he see? He will see all the stationary objects as he goes in one motion, Anuloma Gati, in a forward motion. He would see all the stationary objects go backwards, Viloma Gati. This happens in a train, the relative framework. So too, he says that the unmoving stars seem to be apparently rising and setting owing to the spin of the earth. Okay. And he says this happens, the rise in east and set in west happens only equally to an observer on the equator. Okay. Would it happen on the poles? No, because at the poles you would see the sky spinning like this, right, if you were on the poles. And as you keep traveling up the poles. All this is fascinating. Why aren't we teaching our children these? The ability to visualize this, to look at it. When you look at the North Pole, you'd be able to tell the latitude that you belong to. How did the sailors, the phenomenal shipbuilders build navigation techniques, if not for sound astronomical studies? Sure. So, in fact, Tithi, what we consider as Tithi, is 12-degree movement of moon with respect to the sun. Both sun, moon for an observer have non-uniform motions. And that way I have to now have a frame of reference to understand their relative motions. Again, to the analogy of in my spinning chair, if I was spinning, and if this interview was just happening, you would wait for a little while and then get bored and move away. But for me, if I keep spinning, I would have seen your position shift. How? By seeing the relative background. Correct. This is how the Rashi Chakras are born. So the Rashi Chakras are the ecliptic, is the annual path taken by the sun for an observer. As I go around the sun, I'll see the background of the sun changing every time. Right. So this Bha Chakra forms the, reference point. That's when even when a child is born, we draw the chart with sort of a geospatial timestamp.
Okay.
Of while you were born, what are the relative positions of the planets at every point in time. And this is in fact why Diwali changes every year, or Indian festivals change every year, because we wait for the right sidereal, it's called sidereal motion of planets. We wait for the right astronomical configurations to come back again to celebrate that moment.
So this was even before the Kepler's planetary motion. And
of course. So this is much before the heliocentric theory. In fact, Neelakanta Somayaji, just before Kepler cracked it a couple of years ago, we definitely there is not ample evidence to show that we knew heliocentric theory. But we don't need heliocentric theory to map the motions of the planets, because it's a model. See, even today we study the Thomson's model of atom in schools. They study the watermelon model of every model of atom that they study in school is absolutely wrong, because the path of the electron is a probabilistic cloud. What are they talking about in schools? Yet you model it, right, to study it. So to modeling the planet's motions to perfection, to T, is our Panchanga. Our Panchanga to the T, for an observer, it maps the all celestial motions for an observer. So for us, the center was, in fact, in astronomy, the center of the universe is U, this infinite universe.
And then it is across us.
Yeah. But Neelakanta Somayaji, an astronomer from Kerala, from the Kerala School of Astronomy, Madhavacharya, so later Prithudaka Swami, many people come in the tradition. One such person is Neelakanta Somayaji. In 1500, he came up with this brilliant planetary model, where according to him, the interior planets of the especially the Mercury and the Venus were revolving around the sun. Right. And all the planets were revolving around the sun while the sun was revolving around us. The only shift in perspective he didn't make is that he didn't do this shift. Whereas Copernicus, he proposed this and he himself has backtracked on it. But later calculations were very useful thanks to Galileo, later Kepler picking up on it, that this became quite popular. But otherwise, modeling motion we need not necessarily had to have known the heliocentric theory.
Right.
It's careful observation. But what's amazing is this is a pre-telescopic era. It's about careful, this is a huge big data project. Right. Entire Panchanga is a civic movement. Huge big data, so many people have connected. Especially Parameshwara has done, in Kerala, there is about 58 years of night sky observation data records by Parameshwara. Eclipse records especially, these are amazing. That's how we'll know the spin of the earth, how it's slowing down and so on in modern astronomy.
Right.
So when we are talking about observational astronomy, which is very thrilling for children. Today, a lot of astronomy is spectroscopic astronomy. Right. Very good, very brilliant. But it's good that we as an instrument, we have a lot of intelligence. It's good to hone our intelligence as well and sharpen our Vijnanamaya kosha, so to speak. And that way, astronomy, Ayurveda, mathematics and yoga, in terms of a scientific presentation to children, becomes of paramount importance.
But then, there is this sense of insecurity. In case if I take out my children out of the school and then put it to Gurukula, the certificate that we get, maybe, they won't fetch a good job in US. We have all this. It might be, not that true, but then we still have this in the society. So, what do you say? I mean, how do we get our kids to learn such things? Even though a kid goes to school, can he also, enroll here and then, get to learn from here?
True. At anadi.org/iksedu, we host a set of books along with videos for children to learn on a self-paced mode. Okay. This has a direct impact on their ability, quantitative aptitude, their scientific, thought processes and scientific prowess. It directly impacts them.
This will also help their school
absolutely become very sharp, right, and do away with their phobia. In fact, master things so that they can do well in their Olympiads and so on. In fact, we conduct an annual IKS Olympiad for general. Of course, Gurukulam is not for everybody. But our Gurukulam, we want to create a new trend. That's how it looks like right now.
So where are you guys right now? I mean, you talking about concepts, I want to enroll myself, but then I know it's not for me.
We are about 90 kilometers away from Coimbatore and 12 kilometers away from Palani at a place called Ivarmalai. It's a Purana Sthala. In 7th century CE, there was Airayamma who had a lot of disciples, 2000 disciples plus, it is said, an ASI survey says about that Sthala. Okay. So Purana Vidya Sthala, we are there. Our ashram is at Ivarmalai. A googling up of Anadi Foundation would get you the result for the location. Right. But what's very important in the Gurukulam that we pursue, we want to break this notion that Gurukulam is not for all.
Right.
And Gurukulam is sort of an exclusive model. Not really. Two of our Gurukulam children, the senior most two of our Gurukulam children, have an admit into IIT Madras in their BS Data Science program. And we do NIOS education in parallel, open schooling curriculum along with this. So we blend modern sciences. All our children know exceptionally well the Mendeleev's approach to how the periodic table is constructed. They can tell you which are radioactive elements. They can also play with cow dung and create cow dung cakes. And they can take care of cows. They can take care of plants around them exceptionally well. They can take care of their own fitness very, very well. And at the same time, we envision them becoming leaders of tomorrow's society. We want them to learn all this and then go back into, it cannot be an exclusive education where, you learn something and you're secluded.
Right.
We want them to be back and we want them to be excellent karma yogis. They come back into the society and then create Bharatiya solutions. They become Bharatiya Vijnanis. That's the entire objective of the Gurukula. We believe and we want to create a pathway and catalyze the pathway towards a Gurukula model of education becoming a global solution for various educational woes. There are too many educational woes that the children have to go through at the current times. We believe that pedagogical approaches drawn from our, truly ancient Indian, Gurukula approaches have high relevance even now in terms of how we teach children, how we excite them in science.
So it is false narrative that somebody else gave us culture. They have all taken it from us.
Yeah, and it's even bigger a falser narrative that to think that science came from the West.
Right.
This is a phenomenally false narrative. We are talking about Aryabhatta at a time when English wasn't even born, the language in which we are communicating. When I tell children that this is 4 root x that Aryabhatta is talking about, they're asking really where is root x in it? Right. So today, because of the huge Eurocentric bias, when I put a and a 2 diagonally on top of it, I know it's a square. Who taught you that? Because it's written 2 diagonally on top, what does it talk about? It talks about a into a. So there is knowledge and practices. So when we are cut off from our systemic source text and practices, now we think, we have learned everything in a post-colonial era, we learn it this way, and we think that is education. We think high of Mendeleev, Aristotle, Ptolemy, Newton, Galileo, they're all tall thinkers, no doubt about it. Up to Stephen Hawking's children are...
But to say we didn't have such people is not true.
And becoming, being completely blind to what their breakthroughs were. Right. What did Aryabhatta find? What did Pingalacharya find? What did Bhaskaracharya find? At least the table of contents of these texts children must know. That's immensely inspiring. You'll know how trigonometry advanced. In fact, trigonometry is such a painful exercise now for school children. The Indian approach to trigonometry is very, very liberating. And we also had a lot of recreational math like magic squares and so on. We empowered the thinkers in many ways and to become self-reliant. And that's the need of the hour for a Nirbhar Bharat. Right. And towards that, we feel that this education is going to go a long way. Similarly, in Tamil, systematically somehow children are cut off from texts of bhakti literature. Children are also cut off from texts of scientific literature. So we offer an online Gurukulam called the Aram Gurukulam for Tamil children. Which is an online Gurukulam operating only on Wednesday and Saturdays, where we teach classical literature in sciences such as Agasthyar, Irandayiram, Asthana Kolakam and so on. We also teach Neeti literature. We also teach Bhakti literature in there, which largely now children are not exposed to. Right. We also have a Leelavati Gurukulam of computing where we teach computer science plus IKS. So that modern research can happen at the blend of both. This is for children who complete their 12th standard. They can come, they can enroll. We enable them to getting the distance course at IIT Madras and do an IKS based education along with a data science degree.
Perfect. So much that you guys have been doing.
We believe that it's time for a greater resurgence in the Gurukula system. There's a greater awakening, civic awakening as well. There is thirst in people, thankfully, these days.
What do you think happens in case if this Gurukula culture goes to United States and come back as a Western...
People are attempting it already. Definitely there is the whitewashing of any concept, it helps gain credibility. But I think this time the cycle needn't be that,
So you think the people will start to accept even though it is not coming from West?
The 25 children in our Gurukula are a testimonial to it. Right. And I think we want to enable more independent learners and teachers, be it a Gurukula or not. We want this jnana to spread. Towards that, we think making more books, training more teachers, exciting more children about it, all this only matters.
Truly, I mean, the way you said it was so exciting. And I feel so sorry for our kids that they are not able to get all this in their school. I hope Gurukulas like yours may come up in all the metropolitan cities because that is where, people are so oakish these days. That culture has to go. And I thank you again for being, spending time with us. And then,
So one last closing note that I would like to add is that when you spoke of Vokism, is that in Vijnana, when it comes to Bharatiya Vijnana, it was Dharma Sapeksha Vijnana earlier, which means with values you teach sciences and you use sciences for the welfare of all. Today we can teach technology in a value neutral scenario. I can teach nuclear physics in a value neutral scenario and it can get applied in any which way, welfare of the society or not. Tech, all modern tech, it can deteriorate or it can alleviate people. So, in earlier times, every single question, every single pursuit in sciences was to ensure that there was wellness for all. Right. This is deeply ingrained in many of the classical, math texts, Ayurveda texts. So studying them also ingrains this responsibility, a collective responsibility in children. Otherwise, majorly with sort of making the culture of Vokism where you want to alienate yourself from your cultural identities. Right. This leads to a certain imbalance within the chitta, where you have lost your identity, you have lost, a treasure trove of approaches, that best practices that you had worked upon.
Flowing with the wind.
And now you want to stumble upon and find new things. No harm in it. But is it the intelligent way? Best practices of so many people, collective civilizations, best practices, want to discard at a moment and then, you want to explore on your own. What that leaves us with, it's like this, I can, you can learn all of math from a book, but you saying that let me discover, what a triangle is, what a rectangle, what its area is, without, standing on the shoulders of giants and seers who have already presented the pathway to. And there has been a resurgence, no doubt. While there is Vokism, there is also, thanks to all the great viewers here at Samadhan, look at the efforts all of us are doing. Right. In this boat, we are all together, and there is a certain resurgence that's also happening. Right. And through this resurgence, may we also look into ancient Indian agriculture practices, health sciences, and also education as one among the criteria to lead refined lives.
Right. We hope something like that happens because we've been hearing about NCERT, they're changing the curriculum. I hope something like this comes up.
We are contributing to those efforts as well.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we are.
So, can you spell some beans on it? What is it?
So the knowledge of there is a special division under NCERT called the Knowledge of India division, that they would like to bring up electives in the secondary level and also supplement the existing math books with anecdotes or pedagogical inputs from ancient Indian texts as well.
So it's happening.
Efforts are happening. It's going to take time for any efforts to arrive to fruition, and things can get cancelled anytime. Things can get cancelled anytime as well. So I think when governments change and all that, I think that's where a civic movement is more reliable than just systemic changes. If there is a greater civic movement towards it, any government must listen to awakening to this particular procedure.
Looking at our past, what do you think?
I think the responsibility lies with the individuals. We can't keep relying. Of course, the government's doing I really think it's a fantastic job. Great progress is happening in terms of looking at our education more holistically.
No, that's from past 10 years, but then looking at the history of 70 years.
I think if we can do this Swadeshi movement together, I think we can also, decolonize our education together. Right. It's going to be a civic movement. It cannot be, for it to be really successful, this is my humble opinion, I strongly feel that it's only a civic movement that can be an answer for this. Enough number of people now want to be in Waldorf schools or Cambridge schools. Can there be enough number of people who want to learn Bharatiya Vijnana? If we topple those scales, everything topples.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have no words to say. You've put so much things to my mind. I don't know what to say. But then I wish you all the best.
I wish the Samvada platform and all the listeners also the very, very best. May we all work together for a Shrestha Bharat.